to convert or don't want to buy their units don't have to buy their units. If CW is interested in just selling it as a rental property, there's a long line of people out there on the street, ones you've heard of, you probably don't want to be your landlords, who are prepared to buy it today. And so the fact they haven't sold it for $1.9 billion, we think, is a underscoring of the notion that CW is not interested in doing that. What this group has been trying to do is work with CW Capital to come up with a plan that works for the tenants, to maintain long-term affordability, to provide options, flexibility, but also finding a path that will convince CW to work with us and not hand the keys over to someone that you all would not like to have to send your rent checks to. So I just wanted to make that last point.
I want to thank our professional advisors. And next, we have our Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, who has been brilliantly serving us in our interest in Congress for quite some time, and we hope for quite some time more. I don't think any challengers are really going to make it.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, and I'm thrilled to be with all of you, and good afternoon. It is a great pleasure for me to join my colleagues in government, Councilmember Garodnick, Assemblyman Kavanaugh, Borough President Stringer, and really the extraordinary leaders of the Stuyvesant Peter Cooper Village Tenants Association, Al Doyle, Susan Steinberg, and John Marsh. You are fortunate to have them. And this is really an extraordinary community, and you have accomplished a great deal for your community. You've worked diligently and with great compassion during the last 4 years since MetLife sold Stuytown Peter Cooper, which was the largest real estate deal in history and probably the largest financial disaster. And these tenant leaders and your government leaders have made a huge difference in the lives of the residents here, and I congratulate them. While there are still many unknowns, there are more unknowns than knowns, and that was clear in the statements here today. I'm hopeful that we're beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And part of the reason we're here today is due to the leadership of your Tenants Association. 6 years ago, buyers looked at these complexes as a potential windfall by turning affordable housing into top-of-the-market luxury housing. They hoped to make a financial killing. You killed that possibility forever by fighting and winning the battle to maintain the protection of rent stabilization for everyone and the J51 lawsuit. As a result, potential buyers cannot even think of making a profit by forcing out legitimate tenants. Congratulations. Rose Management is back in place managing the property. They've done well by this community in the past, and I will work with the Tenants Association to make sure they continue to do so in the future. And you've proven what a tremendous impact a united Tenants Association can have on a community. And I know it's frustrating to come to a meeting looking for answers, only to find that we have many more questions than answers. But by working together and maintaining a united front, I truly do believe the Stuytown Peter Cooper will continue to be a wonderful, affordable place to live. Continue that unity. There appears to be a clear understanding that there needs to be a plan developed between the owners and the Tenants Association, but it is far from clear how that plan will be structured or how it will be financed. I've been asked today to talk about the federal role, which is the federal role of financing between Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And as you know, a significant amount of the senior debt is currently held by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And I was outraged to find out that they had invested in this transaction to begin with. They had to know that the only way the junior debt, the so-called mezzanine debt, could be paid would be if a maximum number of rent-stabilized tenants were forced from their homes. And yet, shockingly, they earned affordable housing goals credit for investing in the Stuytown-Peter Cooper deal. It was so bad that I introduced legislation called the Responsible GSE Affordable Housing Investment Act of 2010, and we had hearings on that nationally, to make sure that Fannie and Freddie could never do it again. They could never invest in a project knowing that its viability was based on removing as many residents as possible from affordable housing. It was an outrage and a scandal. They would not receive a goals credit when a project's debt is disproportionate to its income. The bill will also require the GSEs to use the same standards for assessing their investments in the secondary securities market as they would for direct investments for the purchase of affordable housing goals credits, thus putting in sync the standards for securities investments with those of direct investments. But even if this legislation doesn't become law, a lot has changed since 2005. As you know, in the last Congress, my credit card Bill of Rights bill passed. Pew says it saves consumers $10 billion this year alone. And we totally reorganized the financial structure of our country and modernized it, hopefully to prevent the type of meltdown that we had. Chairman Frank supports our legislation, but did not want to pass it because it would open up Fannie and Freddie during the negotiations on the other aspects that we had to get through. But when we get back, it'll be top on the agenda. And as you know, Fannie and Freddie, they lost so much money that the federal government took them over. They're now under conservatorship. And now there is a new agency that oversees these enterprises, the Federal Housing Finance Agency. That was part of the bill that we passed. In 2008, this agency adopted a new rule establishing goals credits for multifamily housing that in some ways is similar to my bill. Multifamily goals credit is now being given based on the numbers of affordable dwelling units financed rather than the number of dollars financed. And while they have reduced the income level at which goals credit will be given, previously it was below 60% of the area median income, or 68 to 80% of median income if you lived in a geographic area defined as low income. The overall multifamily goal for 2011 applies to mortgages on housing for families with incomes no greater than 80% of area median income, regardless of location. And area median income for New York County is roughly $78,000. 80% of area median income is $62,000. So in 2005, enough tenants were low enough income for this project to qualify for Fannie and Freddie. Since then, there's been a fair amount of turnover, and it's not clear whether this entire development would qualify. The question of whether Fannie and Freddie Mac will be able to participate will really depend on a lot of factors, none of which are clear today, and how will the transaction be structured, how many affordable units will be there, do the people in the affordable units meet the criteria for low income or very low income. Goals credits has less to do with the price of rent than the income of the people who live there. And there are people living in affordable units whose incomes are too high to meet Fannie and Freddie standards now. But the Tenants Association has very clever lawyers, that was apparent today, and I'm sure that they will structure it in a way and figure out the way to get the very best financing for the residents of Stuytown and Peter Cooper. And I will continue to work with you, Fannie and Freddie, the residents, Peter Cooper, and everybody get the best and fairest treatment. And we have to remind ourselves, if Fannie and Freddie hadn't been a willing partner at the outset available to purchase the senior debt on the secondary market, the transaction that literally cost so many people their homes and so much anguish might never have happened. So therefore, I would like to work with your team, and especially you, in calling for some federal hearings on Fannie and Freddie, learning how did they get involved in this fiasco to begin with, and how are they going to help us get out of it? And I think we can give them an opportunity to restore their reputation of working hard to help affordable housing and to help people in our country. Let me thank you, and I'm here to work with you. Thank you so much.
We've now come to the Q&A part of our meeting, and I would actually like to start off with a question that I have that I've heard others that was actually not written, and that is, we have a magnificent oval, and there is some anxiety and concern that any owner of this property, if it isn't the tenants, could erect some huge residential building on it. What can we do to prevent that kind of thing from happening? Who would like to step up to the plate on that one?
The real estate lawyer gets this one. Susan, I think that let's start with the supposition that we are the ones who end up buying the complex, because that is exactly what a conversion is. A conversion is that the owners of the units are the ones who control the complex. We would not permit a building to go up anywhere on the open spaces. There are some other potential options as well that we are exploring, and I think depending on how the ownership situation works out, if we end up as owners, we may also explore doing things like donating conservation easements across the open spaces that may result in tax benefits to the owners as well, meaning to us as well. We may electively decide to landmark the complex, which may be something, again, that that's available to us whether we're the owners, when we are the owners. But if for any reason anybody else ends up as the owners, it's something that is also available to us, as an option. So I think that, clearly maintaining the green open spaces is something that can be not only is totally desirable, but can also be financially beneficial, and possibly more financially beneficial to an owner than any other possible use of those unused development rights.
Thank you. This is a J51 question. What will happen with the funds from the Robert decision? Can they be used for the down payment on the property?
Well, we can conceivably tie the purchase of the property together with the settlement at the end of the day. I have been discussing that possibility with the Tenants Association's representatives at Paul Weiss and Moelis. And while this concept has not been formalized in the context of ongoing settlement discussions, it is conceivable that the rent refunds can be issued in the form of credits towards the down payment on the purchases of apartments, if the timing is right, and if the conversion of the property is tied into the settlement process.
What percent of the existing debt would residents be responsible for if an agreement to convert to co-op or condo is reached?
Well, the existing debt would presumably kind of go away. If one of the foreclosure actions that Meredith has talked about comes into play, then the existing debt will somehow be eliminated through several steps. So it's really not being responsible for that debt, but being responsible for any debt associated with purchasing the complex. So if, for example, you went down the co-op route and there was a large underlying mortgage, so you make up the number, $1 billion or $1.5 billion, then the complex itself would be responsible for that, the co-op. If you went down a condo option, you can't have an underlying mortgage, so it would really be tied to the mortgages on your individual units. So this all goes back to the question of, if you wanted to buy your unit, what would the purchase price be, it was a condo, you're purchasing